Welcome to Turmeric and Tequila with your host, Kristen Olson. Questioning a better way, one gracefully disruptive conversation at a time.
I started just trying to stand alongside of anyone who felt like if there was a line drawn, I'd usually go to the other side to stand with people. And I've done that for a lifetime. You know, I was the kid in high school that, you know, would stand alongside kids that felt like they were on the outside or pushed against it. And, you know, I was a student body president, funniest senior, like you know, people knew me. So I wasn't that kid usually, but we all feel like that kid, right? Sure. And I recognize that in anybody who feels that. We all have weirdness, awkwardness, and you know, I come on this today, and I don't want to be the bad podcaster, right? I got the neurosis of like, I want to be like the cool girls you've had on recently, right? Like, we all have those things.
Dude, first of all, yeah, you're definitely in the cool group, which, I mean, there really is no cool group, and so as you get older, you really see, you're like, it's so cool, especially when you see little kids, like, how different they are early on, and you're like, God, I just hope you can embrace that as a young human, because as you get older, that's such a cool, and it's like the littlest things that kids do, you know, painting or art or the way they, you know, converse about the world. It's pretty awesome if kids can maintain some of those like individualities. And we need it more than ever in this world. But were your parents really like kind, giving souls, or did that stem from somewhere? Because I'm such a believer that things start at home. So I'm like, when I see really good adults, I'm like, I generalize, you know, it must have started at home, and vice versa.
Yeah, my parents were people of faith. I grew up in the church, and my parents were not, you know, crazy Christians by any means. And I'm in the church business, so I know crazy Christians. And I saw them really reach out to the world in lots of different ways. I used to spend a lot of time with my father. Would often pick me up after school, and I'd spend time in his work truck, and I see the way that he loved his guys that had hard lives at home sometimes, and I know some things about their story, and I spend time in my father's office listening to him love on these guys that might have struggled with some pretty serious issues, and just seeing the way my dad loved those guys right where they were at, never judging them, you know, guys with hard lives that my father's life didn't mimic. It did when he was young, but my dad made a decision not to be that person when he got old. And so my dad made a decision to just show up at work and love the people around him, and that's how I've always tried to lead. Anytime I was in charge of a team, anytime I'm in charge of other people, anytime I have a chance to be with other folks, those things I witnessed from my dad were really important to me. Yeah.
I think that's amazing, and I think it's particularly important as we get through, you know me, I'm very much for women empowerment and equality on these conversations, and I don't want our young men to get lost in that, and I think it's so important that our young guys get embraced and they're allowed to be emotional and empathetic. So I think that's amazing that you saw that, not only as a young human, but from a male figure, because I think that changes identity as a man and what is capable, and obviously empathy is what we need on all levels. Yeah. Were your parents involved in nonprofits back then, or was it just doing good but living a certain way?
Yeah, you know, my dad was like the Rotary guy, you know, like those sort of things, like some more organized situations, and I would, you know, follow my parents into some of those sort of things. Okay. And yeah, I had a really good model from them about just trying to love the world and accept people. Yeah. And my mom did that the other, you know, she was telling me about a guy at McDonald's the other day, and he was digging through a trash can, getting a sandwich, and she was there with her girlfriends, and she said, hey, don't do that. I'm going to buy you something. I'm like, all right, Mom, the cooler way to do that next time is wait till he's done digging and say, hey, I'm getting breakfast. Can I also buy you? Like, you know, don't tell him to stop what he's doing. Okay. Because that might feel offensive to him. Like, let him do his situation, and then enter into a conversation. She said, oh, I never even thought of that. You know, like, so my mom still lives that life today. She's bringing a girlfriend up to work on the street with me on Friday just to hang out with me. My mom's 80. Oh, okay. And she just wants to have a chance to learn and grow a little bit, and she's always trying to educate. I'm an English minor, not an English major. She's trying to educate her friends about how to live a life, just paying attention to people who are different.
I mean, if we're still having evolution at 80, that's amazing. And I also think that will be the piece that keeps you young and keeps you in the mix and keeps you relevant. And when I think about my parents potentially coming on retirement age, I'm like, oh no, like I mean, money, profitability, finance aside, just being able to like stay in the mix of things, I think is so critical. And especially in an evolving world. So that the fact that they're even so open-minded to, you know, evolving and learning and changing, that's pretty darn awesome.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, we're never finished.
No.
Right.
No.
We never get to the end.
No.
And I always struggled. I ran the same church for 28 years down in Monument. You know, and I always challenge folks to say there's no time when you need to be done, or it's not someone else's turn. I always hate that. Like, now it's someone else's turn. Yeah. You know, and if your story is you did something 20 years ago when you lived in Iowa to make a difference in the world, well, we got to push you. Yeah. Like, there's people you can love, and you've got capacity to help influence the world, and you know, you're made up more than just taking care of yourself. Yeah.
Well, shout out CrossFitters. I mean, I think we're into, as fitness humans, getting to the finish line, yelling time, being done with the workout, and metaphor for life. It's kind of like, well, I did that. I checked all these boxes. Now I deserve this, or like a sense of entitlement or a sense of completion. I think once those senses, you can feel some of that. That's when I think you need to do exactly that. You need to push through and say, okay, what's the next thing? Just like your mom, like, oh, I still want to learn. Like, I'm sure she has a wealth of knowledge and experience, and she's still open to, how do I up my communication? Are these little things? So I think once you sense those points of completion, or I'm tired, or whatever it is, that's when you know it's indicator of, okay, now we got to learn something new, get out there, challenge ourselves. Yeah. And that's hard.
Yeah, it's hard because you get so comfortable and we feel like, hey, we've achieved, or that's why I just think it's so important to be a listener, especially in the world right now. People are drawing lines and saying, this is where I stand and I'm right and you're wrong. And like, how can we just be open to the world around us and believe that people's past experience, their past trauma might be affecting how they're experiencing the world today, and not maybe entirely vulnerable about their experiences, and they've got their guard up. And so just being with people right now is really important, even if they've got a difference of opinion or a different background.
Well, I think more than ever, we've all had very different upbringings, backgrounds, opinions, voices. I just think it was masked by this unsaid, muted, don't talk about aura. Like, you didn't, I mean, even now with my podcast or with heavier conversations, you know, I've been conscious in trying to take a stand in certain things. And I think some close friends are like, ugh, you know, cringy, it's not me. And that's okay. Yeah. But to think, you know, we've been friends for 20 plus years or whatever, and we've never had this conversation, and that kind of sucks. Yeah. And it's like, how shallow is our friendship or relationship or whatever actually? Right. So I think while it's like painful and you got to kind of dig through some mud on some things, and it might not turn out the way you want, like maybe these people aren't meant to be in your life and vice versa, but at least it's true. And at least we have an awakening of what's going on. Right.
Yeah, we hear so many people say lately, let's just agree to disagree, which to me feels always offensive, because that's when we're closed off to people that often we care about, right? Not maybe rather than agree to disagree, why can't we just agree to keep listening to each other? And we don't have to agree, or we don't even have to disagree. Like, why can't we just listen without fighting? Like, that's a possibility, I think.
I think that's huge. I mean, I think it's easier, though, to just be like, let's agree to disagree and be done with it. And you just move on to the next thing. But that in itself is the problem, because now we've got all these problems that we just agree to not agree on. Right. And now we're at like a massive uprising of energy. Yeah. So it's crazy.
When relationships do that, they end up living in separate places in the house, right? And they're not communicating. You stop eating together. You stop loving. You stop the intimacy of life. And when we do that with the people around us that we're having disagreements with, eventually we'll just start living separate lives, and you lose access to those people and they lose access to you. That becomes damaging, you know. And there's seasons, so maybe sometimes that needs to happen, but you know, it's possible to live in the world together. I really think it is.
Yeah, well said. I like lose access. That could be a whole podcast in itself. Relationships and relationship goals. I need to take notes on all of that. But before we get to Holy Kicks and everything you're going on right now, we're in, you know, we're young human, taking notes from mom and dad. Tell me about like high school and college, like any experiences there that helped shape to where you are right now.
Yeah. Yeah, well, Kristen, the reason why I'm bad at CrossFit is because I'm missing a thumb.
Oh, I never even noticed.
I don't hold a barbell well, so that's why I can't RX plus. I just have the RX, you know?
I was going to say, I would say bad at CrossFit is never one thing I'd put on you, but
and plus I'm not strong.
Self-labeled, no.
Yeah, so I've got this crazy thumb. I lost my thumb. I was in a horse accident in middle school, and I had multiple surgeries, even until college, trying to rebuild my hand and get my hand to work well.
I literally never noticed.
Yeah, so I got this really crazy looking hand now that's been rebuilt with bone for my hip and lengthenings and all this crazy stuff, right? And this has really just been a tool for me to, you know, make puppet shows with over the years. But in high school, I had this vision. I spent a lot of time at University of Colorado Medical Center, and I just was exposed. Back in those days, you had a hand surgery, you're in for a week, right?
Yeah.
And so I saw kids that lived at UC Health at the time, Colorado Hospital. And I started becoming mesmerized with that experience. And now as I look back, what mesmerized me was the care, not the medicine. But so I had a vision I was going to make it to med school until I got to I got to CSU, which is a really hard college to get into, right? About a 98% acceptance rate. And so I go to CSU, I'm getting killed in chemistry, and I realize I am not smart enough to be a physician. And my son's in med school now, so I have DNA that's smart enough, but I am not.
It's a certain human.
It's a certain human, right?
Yeah.
But you have to have a certain brain power. You know, I'm not one who believes you can just do whatever you want to do. I actually probably couldn't have been an astronaut because only a few people can, right?
Right.
And I'm at CSU, I'm getting killed, and I'm thinking, like, you know what? I'm going to drop out of college because I've really only ever been good at one thing, and that's making people laugh. I actually used to be really funny. And I'm not anymore, but I used to be super funny. And I'm like, you know, I'm going to drop out. I might go to acting school. I might pursue a life in comedy. And I had an experience the spring of my freshman year when I was planning to drop out. And my plan was to move to Chicago. That was my golden spot where I thought I was going to become even funnier. And I had this weird, creepy experience in church one day. I worshiped at different churches around Fort Collins, and I had really a blackout experience. I mean, it's pretty supernatural. It's so, you know, hard to talk. But I just stood out in front of this church. I couldn't remember anything that happened. All of a sudden that afternoon, I'm in my dorm room. Shout out to Newsom Hall, and I'm like, I think I'm supposed to be a pastor. And so this got stronger and stronger. And of course, I tell my mom and all of her creepy friends were like, oh, we've known that for years about you.
Seriously?
Everybody else thought I was joking because I'm an idiot. I won most obnoxious freshman in my dorm.
Okay.
I am, you know, often the asshole in the room, you know.
But you're out there getting attention. That's kind of the point.
That guy. Never, you know, I'm always crossing the line. I never knew when to shut up and anything.
Are you an Olsen by chance?
I'm a little.
Sounds like
yes.
my entire family.
That's why I like you, because you are both loud. You know, like I'm using my quiet voice right now.
Yeah.
And it kept getting stronger. Then I talked to some pastors, and most were like, "Oh my gosh, it's a terrible job. Don't do it." I didn't get a lot of encouragement. You know, I got these folks that were
even the pastors were
because they're all tired and broken, and lots of them are whiny. You know, and anyway, I've never looked back, and so I took a year off. I got married right after college to the girl I dated all through high school, who died a few years ago, and that's why I'm able to do what I do now.
I didn't even know. Okay.
So it's big part of my story. And so Shelly and I got married right after college, and we had a great life together for 30 years. We took a year off, worked in Denver. I waited tables and painted houses, and I've got some roots here, and I made enough money to make it through my first year of seminary, thanks to my parents' blue-collar work, so I know how to work hard. And headed to seminary in Berkeley at Pacific Lutheran Theological Seminary, pretty left-wingy school, and I took classes from lots of other seminaries. And
wait, Berkeley as in right here?
Berkeley, California.
Oh, okay.
Right. And so I used to always study at UC Berkeley.
Yeah,
and I'd walk around and be like, every one of these students is smarter than me. Every single one of them. But I worked in my entire way through seminary. I worked really full-time doing maintenance and
wait, so this might be a really dumb question, but like so left college freshman year, and then to be a pastor, is it not? It's seminary's equivalent to college. So
in the Lutheran church you have to have a 4-year degree.
Oh, okay.
So I did finish up college, but my plan was just to get to seminary. So I graduated with a humanities degree. I took classes in everything I could that would help me make make me a better human, right?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, like Shelly at the time, I would take human development classes. There'd be 40 women in the class. I'd be the only dude in there.
Okay.
I took some
Some
religion
guys would appreciate
classes.
that,
Yeah, anthropology, and just anything I thought would help me learn more about people. And so I'm really bad at math, right? And I headed off to seminary and ended up getting a call in Monument. I was the first full-time pastor at that church, and Monument was small back then. And so I landed in that place, a super conservative place.
Was Shelly okay with all this?
Yeah, she was pretty gung-ho about the whole thing. She was great. There's, people here, traditional pastor's wives, and I don't know what that means. I don't think there's anything traditional. Just labels people throwing people that always feel offensive. But she was a blue-collar girl too. She worked at Safeway for her entire career in the middle of the night. She was in charge of pricing, and so she was out working at midnight or 4 a.m. Every day of her life. So we always have had these kind of work ethic sort of things in my family.
Which is huge.
Yeah, and it's kind of the same way I ran Trinity as well, and was able to lead there for so long. We had great staff, I had great friends to work with, and a cool congregation. But my entire time there, I worked in the school as well. I ran something called Boys Group, or if you're in the principal's office, you're probably in Tag's group. I tried to keep you from beating up other kids or getting beat. I tried to cool you up and let you push kids less, right? And just started living the life a little bit different, kind of outside of the parish and outside of my church work, which really just became integrated into everything I did.
Were you a parent at the time?
Yeah, had 2 kids when I started.
Did that change the way you were as a pastor, as a mentor, working with some of our young humans?
Not really. I love being a dad, and it's weird being an adult parent. My kids are really super we raised our kids to be really independent, and guess what? they actually are. Yeah. They're totally good. They're great.
Call me, please.
Yeah, they're not the sort of kids that need to call and say, "What should I do?" My son calls me when he needs something fixed, because he's he's a doctor, and he's really good at fixing people. Their physical problems, but he's learning how to fix washing machines. My daughter's way better at it because she makes no money. But
I need both of them.
They could figure out. Right. They could gas you. They could put you to sleep and fix your appliances.
I'm here for both of those, so that's perfect. That's because I've always wondered, because I mean, we kind of saw a lot of the same thing. My mom, ironically, worked at Safeway forever, and actually supported her family for a point in time, and not far from where I live right now. So very blue collar work ethics. My dad built himself from the ground up, kind of walked away from the family business in California, and did his own things. So I come from these wild animal souls that were just going to figure it out, and we're on the non-planned plan, but we had some faith in, we're just going to do what we're going to do. And I think myself and my 3 siblings are all on par with that. But I think those blue collar pieces are huge. One piece, I'm not a parent, but I've always wondered if my feelings towards our young people would change. Like I was a coach for 10 years at Grandview High School after college. If that would change just in being a dog parent. I was never a huge dog person. Like, we grew up with dogs, but now that I have dogs, they're my whole world. If you look at my Instagram, it's 99% dogs. But then with humans, I don't know that it would really change my view or the way I approached young people. Yeah. If that makes sense.
Yeah, it probably wouldn't.
Yeah, I don't think it would. Right. So, I don't know. I just always think it's interesting because I think I try not to ever give advice on stuff I've never done. So I obviously don't give parental advice, but I always feel like I have some intel on young people just from coaching and what have you. Yeah. So I think it's kind of like the one thing where you can give angles on without actually having done it.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things I used to, I just like people to stay in their wheelhouse. Like, how do we grow? But there's certain things we're better at than other places, right? And I always encourage people, like, if you're really good at coaching 3rd grade girls soccer, and your daughter was in 3rd, but then she comes in 4th grade, and you're not as good at that, but you keep going because you need time with your daughter. Yeah. Like, I'm a big believer, like, invest in the world around you. Like, your daughter probably knows you love her already. Like, let somebody else coach her that might be really great at it. And you coach 3rd grade girls soccer, and you go after that, and maybe you make that, like, you become known for that. Yeah. Right? Those kids' lives are changed because you're good at that. Yeah. And sometimes we're always doing things to say, wow, but I want the world to know that I care about them, so I'm going to keep following to this. And you might not be the best person for that place. Like, how do you have enough humility to say, you know, I'm not great at that, and maybe you're not the best for your kids at that either.
Well, I would give a major asterisk to parents and coaching their own kid. I think sometimes it can work. Most of the time, like maybe early on, and then let it pass on, like let it move forward. I think that's I mean, it's like family and business. Like sometimes it can work, but for the most part, it's probably better that you keep it separate. That's just my own personal opinion from my, I guess, limited-ish perspective. But I think it's good for kiddos to get some guidance and encouragement and mentoring from something outside of the family. I think one of the best things I ever did unintentionally so was, and not from the you know, what I was leaving was so bad, but when I left to go to college, you know, from here at Denver, Colorado, I went to George Mason University in Virginia, and I had no idea. I just wanted to play lacrosse, but being away from what I knew, again, not that it was bad, and learning these other lifestyles and figuring out my own identity was so huge. Like, you just don't understand how different the world is outside of your home.
Absolutely.
And it's, until you kick yourself out of that box, it's really hard. So when I see parents coaching kiddos, I'm like, that's great, and it's so great for them to experience, you know, guidance and whatnot from another voice.
Absolutely.
So they can build their own way of digesting the world.
Yep. And parents love for kids to hear their own voice, which is super important. But there are adults, caring, loving adults out there whose voices can really impact you, right? And how do you, I mean, that's one of the, you know, you and I connected from CrossFit, like, that's one thing. Our box is really great at connecting voices together. That head coach, there's a guy named Scott Olson. You should get to know him. He's a great guy. And,
my dad.
He's a connector, right? And some people, that's their skill set. They're connecting. Like, hey, you need to talk to this person because they got a voice that you might need to hear. And the connectors, all they got to do is line those people up, and then they can take it from there, right?
Yeah. He's so funny, and I don't know if it was this, but he's like, yeah, you and your brothers are all, you're such characters. And I'm like, you don't think you're a character? And meanwhile, because we're in COVID, he's got the Hulk Mania mask on that he uses a bandana. I'm like, are you serious right now? Like, it's so, and I actually think my mom might say the same thing. Like, they're so, I don't think they see how much we are so similar to how they are.
Right.
I think because we do look like 4 wild animals. But it's so funny that, like, they don't see through that same lens. Right. Which is just funny observation. But I love that, you know, like, a peer into my family. Most of my CrossFit crew knows, because my dad's obviously a longtime super successful CrossFitter and now runs Palladium CrossFit, but most of them have some peer into my family. So then I think people in turn understand me a little bit more.
Absolutely.
They're like, oh, okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
But anyways, back to you. Enough about CrossFit. Okay, so we're in Monument. When did the whole, or what made you leave Monument if it was such a great congregation and everything else? Yeah,
I mean, I really believe I could have retired there.
Yeah.
We had a healthy congregation, tried to lead really with shared leadership, loved that place, and I think I was pretty well loved there as well, which is hard after a long period of time. People end up hating their pastors, and pastors hate their congregations. I never tried to be that person. I never went by pastor. No one ever called me pastor. Like, we had 4-star generals in our church, like, you know, CEO types. Like, nobody ever called you Engineer Bob, you know, like, just, we'll go by first names and everybody just do your job. And, yeah, my, Shelly got sick, and, you know, due to replicating DNA, sometimes you can't outlive that. And we knew it was super serious from the start, and she really believed that she wouldn't live through that as well. She never talked about that with anybody.
Replicating DNA, would you?
Yeah, just from cancer, right?
Oh,
so cancer grows. And she had a particular type, and she never Googled anything once. She just kept showing up at book club, hanging out with her friends, living life, going to work, and she just lived the life that was in front of her, and which was pretty unusual, right? She never said, I'm fighting, you know, she just said, hey, this is what, I mean, she tried to look forward even to her treatments and love the gals that gave her infusion. She's like, oh my gosh, I love being around those gals, and I get a chance to sleep because she worked in the middle of the night. So she's like, wow, infusion sucks, but I get a rest for an hour. And that's how she lived, and that's how our marriage was. That's the friendship we always had. And but you know, eventually she couldn't outrun it, and she just she had a surgery that got a little upside down, and she had multiple surgeries and treatment, and but she went hard right to the end, and she died that way as well. But she knew that I always wanted to we had spent, she grew up in Denver. We were never fans of this Colorado spring scene. We would drive up to Denver, often multiple times a week, to eat and drink and hang out up here. We loved Denver. And we would drive diverse neighborhoods. And Shelly was just never quiet. She lived a really missional life. She was super supportive of my work with my friends who lived outside in the Springs. And I've spent a lifetime picking up hitchhikers. I mean, she always just didn't want to get bugs. That was her thing. And my car always smelled like weed for my friends, you know, like, you know, and so smoke and weed and dirt was always in my car. And on occasion, one time...
That's like the Colorado brand right there.
I had a car that smelled like human poop one time. That was a whole thing. So I had a lot in my car, and I've always lived an available life. But she was never quite ready to move into the neighborhood like I was. Yeah. She's like, hey, can you just do those things? And I'll hang out with you on occasion, but I can't do that full time. But I wanted to live in this particular neighborhood where I live in North Aurora for really a long time. And Shelly knew I was going to do that, and she blessed me to live that life, and blessed me to live the life that I have now, and things that you know, we shared together that the world doesn't need to know. And how she sent me off was really glorious. There's things the world, a lot of the world can't get their head around now, the life I'm living. And that's just how she lived, and that's how she died. It's super cool.
Wow.
But I knew, she knew I was going to do it. And then, so after Shell died, you know, I just tried to get my grief together and my life together and start to figure out a way to exit Trinity and try to empower the congregation to be who they were. Yeah. Set up my friends that I worked with, that I'd worked with for a lifetime. They're one of my friends I worked with for 25 years. My other buddy we went to seminary together. That was one of our pastors, and a good friend of mine. She's a longtime partner. And I had this opportunity I'd always worked on the street in Colorado Springs. Probably my congregation was like, oh my God, one more story about street friends. But that's my heart. Folks who are up against it is always my heart. And I know if you run a major corporation, you have problems and you have suffering.
Actually get this thing to go. I think that's so... The lesson of having to stop something, and something I've had to learn so many times, to start and really take the faith that this is what I'm supposed to be doing. I got to take this leap, whether you're going from, you know, a full-time job to an entrepreneur position or whatever. It's scary to do that. But it sounds like you were really good about leading into what you knew was right. Yeah. I mean, it's like these major moments in life are happening where, you know, you're in front of a church and you have like this blackout moment, and then, you know, this incredible relationship with your wife, and then like here's what you do. And I mean, it sounds like these pivot points were, and I don't want to take away the fact that it was super hard, but were pretty clear, and you were set on taking those steps.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's pretty incredible. I really want to hear a couple angles, but how is it as a white man on the streets, being amongst people that don't look like you, that aren't from what you're from, that didn't have the privilege that we have? I mean, how is that process in itself? And then, well, that's a long question itself, so I'll ask my second question after. Yeah,
I mean, you got to be careful. Not careful physically. I mean, you sort of do. There's people in the biz that, you know, because I never step down. I'm really...
What does that mean?
So if somebody's going hard on me and wants to kind of argue on the street, like, I'm usually cool with that. But, you know, there can be danger in that. But I usually just hang in there with people. And so you get tested sometimes if people don't know you. I probably spent the first 6 months of just hitting the street on Colfax and in the neighborhood there. You know, I heard many times, hey, get the F away from me. That's common. You know, I can talk to other people in the biz. But I think one of the things that made me different is I just tried to travel without an agenda. And so when people are like, what are you doing? And I would just tell people, I just here to love people. I know.
Do they believe you? I mean,
yeah, people do now.
Yeah. So you've built like some relationship, some rapport within the space.
Right. And I'm you know, yakking my head off now, but I'm a really good listener on the street. Try to make that a little bit of my unique angle with folks. That was the tough thing of working with my other nonprofit, and I was working with Warren tonight. You know, it's all really transactional. I always had hygiene available and underwear and socks, and but I could I found a way to start transcending that, and that's why I created this drop-in center with them, and trying to just interact and be able to mentor and love people and say, hey, let's talk about life. And I would do creative things in that to help people write down their timelines and do some things to open up some creative space for them. And so now stopping and not being transactional, guys know I can get you shoes, and you know, and I've got some buddies that hook me up that enable me to, occasionally I got a few bucks on me sometimes, and I'm always good for rolling papers and cigarette lighters and things like that are so actually cool. People need, right? Yeah. So I'm always good for those things, and you can hustle me out of a bus pass with a good story. And I always say, what do you need, a pedicure and a massage while you're at it? And people usually say, yes, I do. Okay, now I lost my train of thought. I'm the king of ADHD.
Well, no, you're good. I think all I'm thinking as you're saying this is that the conversation is not different, because when you walk in as a white man that's college educated, what have you, into a neighborhood that's socioeconomically diverse or low income or what have you, you're not necessarily from that space, and so to create that space to find common ground is a gift, a talent, however you label it. It's hard for both sides, and you're walking into their space. And I think there's a certain respect and acknowledgement in things that need to happen. And to me, that's no different than you put a Democrat and a Republican in the same room, and it's like, regardless which one's walking to which side, you have to sit down and understand that we're not from the same space. We're not going to understand you. However, I'm coming in open-minded enough to have a conversation to find common ground. And I champion both sides of that. I mean, from someone like them, obviously I can't speak on that behalf, but to be in any space where someone's coming in that doesn't understand you, it's very hard to be open-minded to someone coming in and being like, I'm here to help. And the trust factor within that is, I mean, even as a white person having some of these open mics with people of color and that comes from completely different backgrounds, I champion their ability to be like, okay, what are you going to talk about? How are you going to bring this out? What do you know? And I think there's a point where you have to prove yourself, and that's completely understandable. And prove the fact that you don't have an agenda outside of being a good person, which is also rare these days. So I just understand some of these walls, and I want to champion both sides of that conversation, of having the ability to be open-minded and say, I'm weary on this, I don't trust you at first. And I'm open-minded to perhaps you are actually a good person and doing something for the better.
Absolutely.
And that takes both sides.
It does.
So it's exciting for me to see that not only this is happening, but again, both sides of the table are open to it. And I think within that, it changes your life, and it changes another person's life, and how they view a white man, how they view someone coming in, they wanting to be part of this situation. It's pretty powerful. So outside of the agenda of what you're doing right there, I think that will change conversation for generations to come.
Most of my crew that I work with and love, my friends, I just call my street friends my friends. Most of my friends I work with, are brown and black, and so that there are just these massive cultural differences, not just because of homelessness, but because of background. And I always ask people, I'm a guy who always says, hey, what high school did you go to? To me, that always tells something. It's an entry into finding out a little bit something about somebody. And in Aurora and Denver, the high school you went to will tell you something about the experience that you had growing up, some of the harder things you might have experienced, and there's real ownership in some of that as well. That's why we hear, if you're gang affiliated, where you're from is important. Your roots tell you something. I was working with a friend of mine that helped, a house person that was helping me with Holy Kicks event yesterday. We did an all-women's shoe event yesterday.
I saw that.
Yeah, it was really fun. And she's like, hey, Tiger, I want to get you into my church in Montbello.
Oh, yeah.
And she said, we got to keep expanding Holy Kicks, and that's part of our deal right now. But, for her, she's like, hey, let me bring you to where I raised my kids up in Montbello. They all went to Montbello, and she's like, I could, hook you up with my pastor and the people that we serve up there. And that's all about that connection. But those are cultural differences, right? So, like, for me to walk into maybe that church in Montbello and be like, Holy Kicks is here with new shoes, people, save your life. Like, that's nothing. But, like, I want to go with my friend Jamie to say, hey, Jamie, how can I walk with you to walk with the people that you love? Like, I don't have to love those people like you do. So I love Jamie, she loves the people her church works with and cares about in the community. But so Holy Kicks is never like, hey, we don't need to be the top. We're always about, how do we walk with you to make you successful? Yeah. You know? Yeah. I mean, that's why I'm doing this podcast. I want to make you successful.
I appreciate it, man. You're making me cry, like all the emotions coming out. Oh, no, it's huge. But I think that in itself, corporate America can take note. Like, you don't have to come in and bang in your chest and be like, I'm here. You don't need to come disrupt the situation. Come in and be part of it, and then you need that credibility lent from somebody already in that scenario to come part of it. Like, I'm not going to take a yoga teacher and put him in CrossFit. You need a CrossFitter to be like, I'm bringing in this yoga teacher for us to do yoga on Sundays alone, and this is why it's good. Like, you need those points of I want to say teamwork, and like being a part and building, you know, the respective voices that make sense and have that space to speak on the topic. You can't just come in and be like, here, I'm the boss, listen to me. Right. And I think that is a lot of old school corporate America. I still think that's what it is. Like, I bought it, I own it now, and here's how it is. And it's like, oh, but actually no. And I think our young people are going to hold that more accountable more than ever, because they can read labels, they can see through the BS, they can look up, you know, this guy from Holy Kicks, this girl from Turmeric and Tequila. Like, I'm going to dig into their background and be like, actually, that's not true. Or, you know what? You don't know, this dude actually lives in it. This girl's been talking on the mic for way too long. You know, there is transparency now that there once never really was. Mm-hmm. So I really applaud you guys for taking that approach, and leading into it. Because there's, I mean, it still is, I know it's a 501c3, a nonprofit, mm-hmm. There's still business plays that you have to go alongside and maneuver. Has that been hard, having such hard space, but then having to balance the business alongside it?
Yeah, I mean, that's one reason why I needed to quit my other stuff, to really focus, right? To work on some administration. I've thought about, hey, how can I maybe hire somebody to help us work behind the scenes, to start working these connections. Like, I just went the other day, about 117 pairs of shoes at Ross.
Oh, I saw that. Wait,
shout out for Ross. We want free shoes.
Can you partner with someone? Like, I saw that. I'm like, we gotta get him partnered up.
I mean, I just need time to do that.
I got you.
Right? And so my problem is, I'm not a dad on things guy. Like, I'm really good with folks, and like, I can walk out. I'm not afraid of approaching anybody on the street, or anybody in general. But like, that's my sweet spot, right? Yeah. So that idea of like, call up corporate at Nike and
sponsorship, that's kind of my arena.
And like, those are things I'm like, I just got to force myself to do those things, right? Yeah. But, you know, I met this really great manager at Ross. I first worked with, you know, kind of the store person, and they said, hey, we can't do anything to help you out. Our price point is already amazing, which it is. That's great for us. And we do get financial support. We can do those things. But then the store manager, you know, she had a story, right? And so her story's a little connected with some of the folks that I work with. And she kind of opened up her heart about stuff. And so I have a chance to invest in this really beautiful human who wants to just talk. She's like, hey, come out and talk to me, because her clerks were taking 117 tags off his shoes. It took them a while. And she's like, hey, but you can contact corporate. We normally do this, but your story seems curious, seems interesting, right? And that's the cool thing I think about Holy Kicks is, we're not trying to be something we're not. We're just really stay focused on shoes and walking with people. And it's an easy sell in that sense. Like, you know, like arguing about, like, I don't know if kids really deserve a pair of shoes. Like, you know, that's hard to argue with.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, is there kickback on that? No pun intended, like, what?
Right, if you're at a soup kitchen, like where I was yesterday, like, maybe those folks, like, a new pair of kicks is really helpful. Yeah. It's affirming. One girl came up yesterday, she's like, oh my gosh, you guys have really nice shoes. Like, yeah, because you're nice. Like, you're created nice. Like, you absolutely, girl, you deserve them. And those look good on you. Yeah. You know, that's why we always have people try on their shoes. Like, you go through a bin, you pick the pair of shoes you want that you like. So if you like, you know, yellow sparkle shoes, we may have them for you. We may have a pair of cons, you know. We also have shoes from other organizations that are not as good. So we love when people really give us great quality shoes, you know, that affirms people. That's the idea, you're a whole person. There's no pecking order. So we're hoping that we can keep, you know, working with corporate America to open up some of the things. And I just needed the time and space. I mean, I've really been at it a year. Yeah. And so it's not long.
Well, now it's full focus. I will say this, though, on the bright note, now with all this disruption in corporate America getting called out, and I'm here for a lot of it because I've seen such phenomenal things. A lot of it needs some improvement. I'll be 100 with that. And I've worked with some majors and some smaller startups, which are my favorite, but they usually never have budget, justifiably so. Now corporates need you know, these avenues of like, what are you doing to make this better? How are you fixing the problem? You're on the front lines of TV and commercial, and this is how our youth is digesting our reality. What are you doing? Like I saw Old Navy do a really phenomenal job of talking about inclusion, and they posted Black Lives Matter, and they were very upfront with it, and I thought that was phenomenal. Whether they're doing that from heart space or marketing agenda, I don't know. And I said this on a few casts. Fine, whatever it is. But at least we're projecting this new way of thinking, and it's holding them accountable in some capacity to do something more than slang clothes. And I think that's powerful. So I think you're teed up for a really nice spot to be like, here's what I got, here's what I'm doing, who's in, and I think corporations will be looking like, we need this. This is good. And hopefully it identifies with their heart space, and they're like, we believe in you in this. Or maybe it's, you know, this is going to help us sell shoes, what have you. Either way, if it's helping you guys, we'll take it. So I wouldn't be surprised if something big comes across your table and you're like, oh, okay, Ross, let's go corporate, let's be partners, let's do this together. And I think there's a lot of upside to that. You know, then they can help, I don't know, distribution or whatever. But
it was so fun. I met this dude. He was somebody said, hey, that guy's looking through your bin, because I had 5 carts full of shoes over there, and there's a really big tall dude. He's got to be 6'8" in there. And he was looking through, and I went over, I said, hey man, I said, those are actually ones I've collected. I said, but if there's something you need, let's go. Because oh, I was size 18. So I was like, whoa, brother, those are. I said, there's some back there.
Seriously?
Yeah. And so I said, you know, I got some 15, so I grabbed, but I said, there's some back. It was so cool. This guy, you know, I'm just chatting with this dude a little bit. It's so cool. Like, he comes out afterwards. He's like, hey man, you need help carrying this stuff out? Because I drove up my truck. And this cool dude ends up carrying shoes out to my truck, and he's like, hey, I love what you're doing. We had this beautiful conversation about, you know, just how he feels in the world, having trouble finding shoes, right? And so you make this cool connection over shoes. Like, it had nothing to do with shoes, but then suddenly this guy's helping me get shoes on people's feet, which is helping me carry out some stuff. It's so cool. He goes home and says, oh my gosh, you know, I met this guy, we found these shoes, and like, you know, these little connections that just spur and drive other cool things.
Absolutely.
And, you know, I didn't know that size. There are times I buy big shoes that are expensive because I bought them online. And now all of a sudden I found this connection. And a dude who said, hey, always come here. They got big shoes. Like, it's so great. And I got friends that have huge feet.
Yeah.
You know,
well, I mean, you really need a wide angle of size, color, style.
Absolutely.
I mean, all this different angle. And I actually think, as shallow as it sounds, I think fashion is a major way to, like, emote to the world of who you are. So I think that's really a critical point. Anytime, I mean, anyone that's gone back to school and they get their new shoes or what have you, new shoes are a big deal.
Absolutely.
And I like to be a wannabe sneakerhead, but I try and keep mine clean, and my wedge sneakers I get. And I don't know why shoes are such a big deal, or maybe that's just my own narrative, but you feel different walking in new shoes. I think it matters.
Right. There's a little something about that extra, you know, skipping your step, right? That's something about that. It's a little bit of identity. It's a little bit of value. They're noticeable, right? And so shoes become a natural for me of chatting with people as well. You know, I point that out. Or I got this beautiful relationship in my life now. A yoga instructor who thinks CrossFit needs to settle down a little bit.
She's not wrong. She's not wrong.
Yeah. So Kara's been a huge help with me with. Just being able to survive life in the hood and partner in life together. And
does she live down there as well?
She lives 2 miles from me. We live next to each other in Colorado Springs, but we didn't know each other.
Oh my gosh.
And so we met a year ago, and she's a social worker, and we have this fantastic relationship and life-giving partnership, and just so great to have a partner to do this life, right? But the other day I met this cool girl. I was doing a big food pantry the city of Aurora is doing with a place called Aurora Interfaith Community Services. And there's this young girl about 11 next to me, and the city's let me do this kind of prayer, and I'm always like, hey, hope this doesn't feel offensive, put the guard up. It's been really fun. I'm supposed to be there this morning, but
oh geez, I no, a prayer, man. That's not a good omen.
And especially the Jesus clock fell off earlier.
I know. So. Just quick tidbit, I had a longer story with there was a Jesus clock in storage, and where I built out this studio, it was in storage, so I hung it on the wall, and I didn't think it was going to stay, and it didn't stay, and the glass broke off yesterday. I think it'll still work, but I'm like, Tyg, is this a sign? Like, am I on the what's going on here? I was a little weirded out about it, so.
I have no icons in my home. It's perfect.
Oh, gosh. Okay. But anyways.
That's so funny. So anyway, I was next to this young girl, and she had these really cool Vans on. She's probably 11 or 12. And I was standing next to her, and I kind of kicked her foot a little bit. I said, "Hey, I love your kicks." She kind of looked at me like, "Why is this guy touching my shoe?" And I was telling Kara the story. I said, "I was trying to get to talk to this girl." Like, and she's like, "Yeah, because you're not supposed to kick people's shoes." So I'm like, "Oh yeah, that's my connection." You know, like I often, that's my move with people all the time. Like, "Hey, nice kicks," and I always kick the shoe. And you know, so sometimes I do things in the world that everybody else says, like, "Hey, the way you roll is not cool."
Well, so, this is when you need a true partner in crime where you can be like, "Ugh, you know, I'm gonna coaching moment, like, I got you." That's so funny. Well, on that note, I really, so homelessness in Denver is a major conversation right now. COVID-19, I think I heard some crazy stat, like it's going to go up by like 40% because of the, not foreclosures, evictions. That, you know, they're going to be happening more, that there's no more protection around it. Now we've got some of the funding for unemployment being cut off, all these things. So homelessness is about to rise. It's a major conversation in Colorado. First question, what is some protocol, you know, if you are out in, you know, there's homeless people around you, and I sound so white and privileged saying this because I am, what is like protocol of, is it just more respectful to give space or to say hello, or what is protocol there? And then you leaned it a little bit earlier about saying not stopping them when your mom was at McDonald's, but just saying, "I'm going and can I do this?" Like, what is some proper way to communicate? Within that?
So important, Kristen. Just be yourself.
Yeah.
You know, never force things, right? And so, you know, folks who live on the street, you know, so the current language is people experiencing homelessness. Though I don't know one street friend who ever says I'm experiencing homelessness. But in the business, if you were in a group and you said, "Hey, the homeless community," or "People are homeless," people are there. I don't know any people are homeless, but I do know people experience.
So I've said it wrong this entire interview. Amazing, dude. That's what drives me crazy, because at a street level, it's so different. But you're just like, okay. But you know, in the biz, if you were writing, or you know, even on my IG and stuff, I say, you know, that homeless. Holy Kicks walks with people experiencing homelessness and economic disparity. And that is, you know, the correct sort of lingo. But for folks who are living outdoors, one of the things I think is really important, just be yourself. And so it's really what you feel called to do. So if you're not cool talking to strangers, I would say don't do it, because you're going to come off weird. You're going to come off weird. You're going to come off, you know, and folks already have friends. So that idea that we're going to brighten a person's day, like, oh, I gave a homeless person a hug. Like, you probably didn't change their world. So I say, you know, do what feels right for you, but don't force your thing on them. And so, like, if you're walking on the street, or you're walking by, like, an encampment where there's tents at, you know, if people are outside and chatting, maybe, number one, you don't need to walk on that sidewalk and walk over all their stuff. If you do pass somebody, just be as friendly. Do what you would normally do in any situation. So maybe if you say hi, say hi. If you say, "How's the day treating you?" say that, you know. Just try to be yourself. There's that idea of always doing stuff to or for people. And I always think it's important to do stuff with people. And so, you know, I'll often see people come up to folks who are living outside, and maybe they're sitting down, they do the stand over, and people love to post pictures of like, "Hey, I'm handing you something. Here's a picture of people, us giving them something." And I always, that's a way to do it. But that place of how, if you want to have a conversation with people, I often, so, you know, my crew is really the Colfax community between Yosemite and Havana, and the blocks going each direction. But if I'm in Denver and I chat with folks, you know, I always say, because they don't know me, I'll be like, "Hey man, my name's Tiger." You know, I eventually tell them my name. I usually don't ask their name first. And then I'll say, "Hey, are you cool if I sit down?" You know, sometimes I'll sit down as the conversation's going if I read that well. But I'll also ask permission. "Hey, can I come into your space? Are you cool with that?" But that kind of talking over people is gross. That need to, "Can I brighten your day?" You know, that sort of need to do something to people. So, you know, we always see people flying signs, right? So when people have a sign on the side of the road, people call it panhandling, but it's called sign flying, or people could say, "I'm going to go fly today." Oh, okay.
And so never, you know, whatever it says on the sign may or may not be true. You know, stranded for 8 months, can't get a bus ticket. Somebody's bought, they've got probably 12 bus tickets by now. My friends that fly signs, what they say is, "Don't yell at me to get a job." That is their job. It's just economy. So roll down your window. You don't have, if you want to be generous and hand out $1 or $5, Like, if that's your deal, do it. That money's going to go to good use.
Yeah.
You know, don't think they automatically need another water. I always say people love Gatorades. That's usually a cool thing. But we'll usually be like, hey, I've got a Gatorade. Is that helpful to you today? Like, don't be like, here.
Yeah, okay.
You know? Or don't be like, hey, here's what's important to me. Like, if you want people to get a sandwich, then buy a $5 gift card to McDonald's and say, hey, dude, I got a $5 gift card I got handy for if that's helpful for you. You know, like, usually ask permission versus the shove off. You know?
And I think and I feel ignorant even asking that, but I do think it's an important conversation because you're dealing with one human to another human. Like, why would you treat anyone else like I'm not gonna walk across it and be like, here's your water that you need, or I mean, which most of humans would probably take it. But it sounds just like duh. Like, of course this is how you are.
Right.
And I don't think a lot of people really get to be around the homeless, certainly not the amount that you do, but understanding that community as a community and what it is. Like, we're just not exposed to it.
Yeah.
So I think it's an important conversation to be like, duh, like, do what you do with most people.
Community is an important thing, Kristen. Realize, you know, folks who are experiencing homelessness, most of them already have friends, already have buddies. Some have been out for years. Even the folks that kind of steer clear and kind of stick by themselves. I got one of my buds has been living in Joliet Park lately. A really cool dude. We watched some videos of his brother fighting Butterbean back in the other day.
Okay.
He's really cool, and every time I go see him, he gets out a cooler and a cushion for me to sit on. Okay. Right? So it's just hospitality, and most folks are going to welcome you into their space if that's their normal gig. Mm-hmm. Some people stick to themselves, but realize people already have community. You know, and so, like, I always call them the do-gooders, and it's a good thing. There's a lot of good but it's like when the do-gooders roll up on the population and be like, here's our sandwiches for the day, and we're heading back to the suburbs tonight, and they all leave saying, hey, we did this great thing, versus maybe going and say, hey, what would be helpful for you guys? Yeah. So I'm always trying to develop leaders on the street, and say, you know, I had friends help yesterday with our Holy Kicks event. Like, you know, one of my buddies just asked me, I said, Sonny's super cool dude. And I said, hey, Sonny, you want a t-shirt, bro? And he's like, hey, man, I don't work for you. He said, I'm volunteering. I'm like, you shut your mouth. Like, I'll strangle you with this t-shirt.
Yeah,
like,
right?
You want it? I just said, hey, if you want a t-shirt, I'll give it to you. But for him, it's that deal like, hey, I'm volunteering. Like, I don't, like, wearing your shirt looks like I'm working for you. But most of my friends are like, oh, absolutely. So, you know, I brought you a shirt today, right? Like, but I love that deal. Like, don't assume. Yeah. You know? And so for my friend, like, yeah, dude, I'm here on my own accord. Yeah. You know? And as we work with anybody who's in a cultural situation that's different, like, how do we not assume? How do we ask questions? What would be helpful? What do you need? Yeah. What do you need that I could work with you? You know?
This is like important conversations for like kindergarten. So it's like, this is how you get along with people, not even if they look like you. 9 times out of 10, we didn't come from similar space. Like, maybe on paper it looks similar, but we've probably gone through way different experiences. And so to come in and be like, tell me about you, to be able to listen, and then to be able to be like, this is how I see the world, or these are my experiences, and these are friends that I already have, or how can I be part of your situation versus come in and coach it, mold it, assist, whatever. Yeah. That seems like it should be an obvious skill set we should be teaching our young humans. So now at, you know, over 25, we're not like, well, how do I talk to the homeless or people experiencing homeless? Like, I don't know. This is where I have such faith in our young people. They have access to these conversations earlier on, and really get a view and help shape society in such a different way than we grew up with it. I think that's so huge. How is it working with young humans? Like, when you're out there and you're in the mix of this, people, you know, experiencing homelessness and a harder way of life, does it, and I don't want to get into like white fragility and all these things, which are all things, but do you feel overwhelmed with how much that needs to be done? Like, how do you manage that? Like, I know every little thing matters, every conversation matters, and you know, as I do my research or watch documentaries or get out there, I'm just like, damn, there's so much to do. Sure. How can I possibly, I know it helps, but then I have days where I'm just like, I don't think I can do enough. Yeah. How do you manage that conversation with yourself or your experiences?
Sure. Yeah, I think when I work with younger folks I'm spending time with, I'm probably more of an encourager with them. I see my older friends, guys my age, you know, a lot of my older friends have, you know, got 15, 20 years of incarceration behind them. They just know places, they're in a different subtle place in life, right? But some of the younger kids that I work with, you know, that are trying to figure a way to raise their kid in a motel, Colfax motel, or they're staying with, you know, couch surfing or something like that, or maybe on the street with their little ones or living out of the car or something. Like for them, I really try to help with next steps. And those are the times I ask questions like, hey, what do you want next for yourself? And so if I can point them to the right direction or hold them accountable, like I give out my phone number to folks on the street. I'm one of the few street workers who does it. And that can get a little crazy because none of my friends call during work hours. And sometimes they call and, you know, they've been experiencing the joy of the day. And so it's a little cuckoo town. I'm like, hey, dude, I can't understand you. But I really try to say,
the joy of the day.
Let them know, hey, they're loved. You're doing it. Really try to build them up with good things that are going on. When they make hard decisions, I'll just say like, hey, how did that work out? Or, hey, what could you do differently next time? Or are you okay with that, right? Let them come to their own conclusions, but just say, hey, I'm here for you, man. I don't know if I can't help you accomplish those things, but I can walk with you, stand by with you, cheer you on. Like a girl yesterday that I saw, she works the street a little bit. She's a doll, and I just love her. And she hadn't seen me in a while, and she gives me a big hug, and she said, Tiger, why did you leave us? And she hadn't seen me for a while.
Wow.
Like, there becomes a sense of safety. And not that I've ever done anything. She uses my phone a lot.
Yeah.
I've never really done much for her, but she misses being with me.
Yeah.
And those are the things for me that tell me the importance of constantly being in the same places at the same time. How do people develop that trust, that sense of safety, you know? Like it's, you know, like in the CrossFit world, you know, your dad's a friend of mine and I love working out with your father. He makes me stronger. You know, I'm never going to be the strongest, most coordinated guy in the gym. And like, when your dad's with me, I feel like I can do stuff. Like yesterday, I thought I was going to be at the 30-minute mark on this one. And Scott Olson's like, Ty, you'll bust 30 minutes. I'm like, he said that to me. And I'm like, I'm busting. And I got 25. You know,
yesterday was long, by the way, but yes.
It was long.
Yeah.
But you know, who stands with us to say, hey, I believe in you.
Yeah.
And even if Scott didn't believe I could bust 30, he told me.
Yeah.
And I did it, right?
Yeah.
So those friends that we're holding in the world, or those friends that we start to develop relationships with that might, you know, look different in the world than us, have a different life, have a different trauma, have a different background, have a different economic situation, a different location. Like, how do we just keep standing with those people with the skill set we have? You don't have to change anything. Yeah. But when we love people in a really accepting way, and you know, the world right now is loving people through, you know, indignant anger and stuff, and that's really doing some great things. I believe in so much of that. But ultimately, you know, I always feel like we got to get to a place where we can really sit with people and be present to start to do greater things together. You know, sometimes we got to be angry to make that happen, but you know, eventually we got to just be still.
Yeah, that's something that it's shown up in different like intuitives or religiously. You read a lot about being still, and I'm not still by nature. Professionally, no. Personally, none of it. But it's been really an important lesson. Again, like I think something that would be wonderful to be taught in kindergarten of like, how do you actually, let's hold still. How do you actually feel? What are you thinking? Are you listening? Yeah. You know, get in touch with yourself. And that's such a new conversation. Probably for me over the past 10 years of really dialing in and still trying to. I think that's a never ending, you know, journey. But to really, I don't think that's really like American culture for us to like pull back and like stop moving, stop calling, stop being, you know, digital everything, like stop consuming. Yeah.
Karen and I coming up, we've been going nuts lately. We, you know, investing in some friends and family and connecting with folks. We did a wedding 2 weeks ago together where we bought the cake and the flowers and
I saw that on Instagram.
Yeah, Karen's a videographer, you know, for our wedding. Like we're doing that together. Like there's been all these full things of others. Like we got a weekend coming up, like our phone-free weekend, you know. And you know, we'll probably check our phone a couple times a day, but the idea is to just shut down, be present with each other. How do you be still? How do you be mindful? So that you're worthwhile to invest in the world around you.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm never one to say, hey, it's me time, Tyg time, that those are things I think can happen in different ways. But, you know, how can we be still enough that you can settle heart, mind, soul, spirit, neurosis, mayhem, that the world, that you got something to be present with, you know? Because especially the ones we're loving are full of those things. And if we're full of those things, you're just going to be on that negative energy, right?
Yeah. Well, and that's a rare skill set. I'm so happy you found somebody on similar ground that understands that, because I think that's a really complicated isn't the right word. It's a very evolved space, particularly for Americans.
Right.
That's a pretty deep conversation. I think you've had to have gone through certain things to even understand that. Like that's pretty amazing.
Yeah. She's a social worker that works mostly with breast cancer patients, right?
Oh, okay.
So she's good at telling people like, hey, how can you slow down? Be mindful. Deal with all of this life change that you have to actually hear and invest into the world, you know? Yeah. So we just got, you know, how can we surround ourselves some way or press up against the ones we can actually learn from? Because of me.
Dude, well, that's the beauty when people are like, everyone's so different, this and that, and, you know, black and white, Democrat, Republican, blah, blah, blah. Yes, but if you really pull back and you know they're so different, you can learn so much.
Right.
And I mean, even having friends that are slightly different, and you see how maybe they cook different, or they converse with their parents different, or little stuff that then changes how you move forward in life. Yeah. And your kiddos or your friends start to do things a little, and we start to become immersed, and we start to have all these commonalities over little tiny things. Right. So kind of going back to my question, so do you not ever get the sense of like, there isn't enough time, I'm not doing enough, like, it sounds like you're pretty good with like your awareness of impact. Yeah, I usually don't stress. I'm a stressed guy. I mean, I'm really good at staying awake at night. Are you? You seem very chill, but okay.
Yeah, but I worry about things at night, about certain things.
Okay.
You know, like that shooting across my house actually did rent. And Karen and I were stuck in my truck 2 months ago. It's about 30, 40 bullets came down the street. We saw the guns. We were in a midday gun shootout on my street between two guys in cars. They shot up the street. They drove by shooting. We were hiding it started as we got in my truck, and we're laying down in the front of my truck trying to avoid this. But this shooting, that happened from my house, and there was someone killed in front of my house as well 2 years ago. And in my hood, there's lots of gun violence. But, you know, then 2 months later to have that murder happen right in front of my house, and it's tagged up with a lot of gang tagging on the street, you know, right where I parked my truck and on the sidewalk. And there was police tape in my yard still when I got home. I wasn't at home when that shooting happened this weekend. But that idea of how do we center ourselves, there's things that rattle us, you know. And so, you know, I've been having some dreams about, you know, a certain color showing up at my house, a certain gang color.
Oh, okay.
That color that represents, like, because it rattled me.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm talking to some buds that are in that particular gang. They're like, dude, you got nothing to worry about. But sometimes things brush up against us so close that we think it becomes a part of us. And I think how we center ourselves, how we behave, you know, how can we be a part of those things that are really not about us and still be ourselves? And I think that place of, the calmer we go into those places with the less agenda, the more impact we make. Like, I'm not going to change gang violence, but I can love people who are in gangs. I can listen to what's your story. You know, I can talk to that poor girl whose boyfriend was killed, you know, and not immerse yourself completely in it, but be present, you know,
and be a supportive factor wherever you can fit in. Did you have any like training in counseling or anything like that? Because some of these are really, really heavy conversations. Or does more of this just go back to experience, who you are as a human, partially religious conversation, I'm sure. Was there any formal skill set, or is this just all straight up experience?
Yeah, in seminary, you know, Lutherans are pretty overeducated. Lutheran pastors, as a rule, a lot of them go on to do more things. But, you know, I had some counseling classes in seminary for sure. But I think the best thing I did, I worked at San Francisco General for a semester when I took a death and dying class during the AIDS crisis. And to walk onto that floor and to see these, you know, these men that were in the 30s and 40s, back when the world was angry you know, and just learn how to keep your mouth shut, you know, like, hey, I'm here representing God.
Yeah.
You know, just shut your mouth.
Yeah.
And I think my best counseling skills ever came from that experience of walking in and just learning to just, how can you sit and be still and say, is there anything on your heart you want to talk about?
Yeah.
And to just hear without needing to answer. And that's probably the best skill set I got in the counseling world. You know, I'm never really a fixer in the counseling world. I'm like, it's a lot of, hey, what do you want for yourself next? I can give some direction, but yeah. Pastors, as a rule, they always talk about pastoral counseling. Like, I just send somebody to a professional. do what you're good at.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think a lot of it's like just finding that space to where the door is even open. Because sometimes, like, people don't want to change. And I respect that, too. Because we all have, like, our evolutionary process, and it's all in due time. And so all you really can do is kind of be that support in the mix. And that's hard, particularly when it's someone close to you, because you want to be like, let's change this, let's fix this, or let's move forward. Or, but if someone's really not ready to do that, you got to just respect that and let it be.
Yeah.
And on that note, I want to talk about a little bit addiction and trauma and mental illness. Tell me if I'm wrong, because I'm not super privy to people experiencing homelessness. Do you think that's a huge conversation around homelessness in general, and that's a huge piece of it?
Yeah, it is. It is. You know, there's a little cart before the horse, chicken before the egg. With all of that, you know, I'm a big believer, and lots of people are in the business, that, you know, homelessness is the result of trauma, some trauma, and that could come from eviction, incarceration, addiction, mental illness, foster care. Domestic violence is a huge issue, especially amongst women, but I see that amongst some men as well. And there's often some life transition. A lot of people say, hey, you're one paycheck away from homelessness. And most of us who are one paycheck away from homelessness, if we've been getting a paycheck, we probably know how to get a paycheck. So we're also maybe one paycheck again away from housing. That's, I think, is the missing piece. And you say you met one person who's homeless, you met one person who's homeless, right? And so everybody's got their own story. But addiction and mental health issues are exacerbated when you sleep outside. Like, I always tell people, like, just go sleep on your front porch with a blanket for one night and see how edgy you are the next day. And then imagine the next night you're not allowed to go back in your house, and that blanket's been sitting there all day, and it's been raining, and you got to crawl under that thing again and do it all over, and then see how you feel the next day. And eventually those things start to pile. Like, you know how when you go camping, I just want to get a shower and I feel gross and get all this stuff unpacked. Yeah. Do that for a couple years, and you start to get, your head gets jacked with, your heart gets jacked with, you know, one of your podcast has the word tequila in it, and that the issue of drinking, of drug usage, of whatever it is to medicate your life to make it through the night is just multiplied. Yeah. And the longer you're on the street, it's often multiplied. You know, most of my friends I hang out with, you know, I'll drink 20s during the day, and most drink, you know, kind of some fortified beer, and it's due to all kinds of things. Most of my friends all talk about their addictions. They also usually talk about other people's addictions. They'll say, at least I'm not that, right? And so it's the boundaries of saying, hey, at least I'm not completely struggling out here. You know, I got my life under control because I've only got these things going on. Right. And it is an issue. And in order, you know, people go to rehab often, but if you're back on the street, your chances of getting back to your old habits are pretty good. Yeah. It's going to be hard to break it.
Do you think there is, perhaps not a solution, but do you think there's something we could be doing better as a society, as a government, is that a whole podcast in itself?
Probably is.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we got to keep addressing childhood trauma.
Yeah, agree.
Those are the massive issues of, you know, the system, the process, the education, the home life, the issue of mentorship, a safe adults in your life, poverty, eviction. I mean, the kids that live on my block, I'm talking about this little boy the other day, he's with his mom. I know these kids, like, I'm talking this, you know, honestly, 7-year-old dude, like, he had somebody killed in front of his house. I'm talking to his mom about it. Like, you know, a lot of 7-year-olds are traumatized because they didn't make the soccer team.
Right.
Or they didn't get another next step of Fortnite.
Right,
like,
right.
I mean, this dude lives in a place, and because of his parents' documentation, like, they don't have choice but to live in that hood.
Yeah.
And he's a boy.
Yeah.
You know, and then the crazy neighborhood guy's like, hey, how you guys doing with the shooting?
Yeah.
I mean, you know, so effed.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, so those are issues, and that kid could struggle.
Yeah. Oh,
right.
I mean, I would think so. Like, and that's why I think some of these conversations and like these skill sets and perhaps a lighter tone need to be happening in kindergarten. Like, these are coping mechanisms. These are how you be open-minded to people that don't look like you or came where you came from, or this is what's possible. If you're in a certain neighborhood, you can, you know, do certain things. And I don't know, I don't have the perspective you have because I don't have the experience you have, but I would agree that I think developing these skill sets and this exposure very early on, I think would navigate around a lot of our current circumstance.
Absolutely.
I think it's huge.
Yeah, I'm not one to Kristen believes homelessness can be solved. There's lots of organizations that say, let's end homelessness. I'm actually not one who believes that can happen. And, you know, and I don't talk about that a lot with people in the business, because people are like, we got to fight. That's the goal. Housing first. Yeah. You know, I always believe we could solve homelessness today. We could get everybody in the metro area house today, and people would be on the street tomorrow because of the trauma from 20 years ago. Sure. And until we address the current trauma, we start working with kids in such a positive way to address the current trauma going on, like, and to have a way to heal that and acknowledge it, to walk with people. It's just going to keep landing people on the street. And then we're like, oh my God, like, I'm sorry you're using, and you're living in a tent on this street and it's bothering the neighbors, and now you're going to get swept. And, you know, it's, if we could address the trauma from 20 years ago, like, everybody needs a really great therapist and a place of respite and somebody to hold them, and a discussion that needs to unravel the 40 years of their life. It's going to be a tough one.
I don't even really know where you start, and then but then I get back to like organizations like what you're doing and the life experience, and, you know, even conversations like this, like, you just hope it's one step in the right direction, and that, you know, maybe one kid changes, or do you have like a incredible success story, I guess? I don't know if you label it that way, but a point where it's someone came back to you and been like, this pair of shoes changed my life, or this conversation helped me take the next right step. Sure. Are there a bunch of those?
Yeah, I'm all about recent stories.
Okay.
You know, so if you got a story from 5 years ago, like, oh, come on, it's working a little bit. Come on now. Yeah, absolutely. You know, so, I mean, my story about Sonny yesterday is a little bit of one of those things, right? But yeah, I would say that kind of daily piece. I got a wedding coming up here in 2 weeks that Karen and I got to go. Well, we were going to do in the park. Saw some of my friends. They lived in their car for 5 years. They recently got housed a couple months ago, and everybody thinks they're married, but they're actually not. Okay. And so, you know, I've got these kind of street chaplain roles where people call me preacher and do this. I never tell anybody, you know, that at all. And I was talking to these friends the other day, and they're just simply talking about that they want me just to bless their marriage. And we're doing a little kind of live marriage counseling. Like, she's like, hey, we don't need that. We don't need the paperwork. He's like, I think I do need that paperwork. And and there's just this transaction going on where I'm able to sort of be pastor to them and street chaplain and friend and partner with them and kind of hold this couple. And between when I sit with them, you know, on the street, and they spend a lot of time on the street still. And to me, those are just simple stories of success of somebody who I used to walk with when they did live in their car, and now find housing, who now say, can you be a part of the next celebration of our life? Now, the next celebration of our life isn't going to look like the world thinks it needs to be, but we still want you to be there, right? And those are just the simple things about how do you create longevity with folks, beyond, hey, you know, we hooked you up with a new pair of shoes, and I love you, and I care about you, but they say, hey, here's what's going to happen in a couple of weeks, and you're going to be there, but it's going to be different than we expected. And I love Kristen, that life can be different than we expect.
Yeah.
And that makes it worth it. You know, like, if we can keep walking with people to get to a place where they don't expect it to be, and we don't have to figure it out for them. We don't have to do that, but like, just stick it out with people. You know, like, you're of value, you're whole, you're worth it. To me, that's the victory every day.
Yeah. Dang, Tyg. He's got me crying here. No, that's so deeply well said. And I think as we dig in and ask questions of how do I do this the right way, and how I really do think the answer is simple, as just showing up and being that supportive space, and being the person that you would want, and being able to be somebody, honestly, like Shelly, and how she showed up, and to be able to have these really selfless conversations, and that supporting space. Yeah, I think it's huge. I think this is the first cast I've actually teared up on, but I really appreciate that vulnerable space, and I think, again, the way we can be intentional and the way we can show up for the world and show up for individuals is so huge, particularly right now when, you know, you don't know, you know, you might have somebody that's experiencing homelessness, and you might have a corporate CEO, and they feel equally as lost and lonely.
Yes. And
you just don't know, just like you said, how things appear and show up, because in our own mind, we're trained to perceive the world a certain way. And, you know, white man dressed clean, he must have money, he must this, white girl this and this. But you pull back the curtain and it's like, dang, we look so different, and yet we might be experiencing some of these really similar human problems. And the beauty is to somehow find a way to create that space, to find commonality, and support one another. So that's huge. And even hearing you speak, this conversation has been so enlightening for me, of being like, you know, maybe you know more than you think you know, and maybe you're doing more than you think you're doing, and so much more can be done by almost doing less, and listening and taking note and showing up. Yeah, absolutely. It's huge. How does somebody get involved with Holy Kicks or support your cause? Are you a part of a church right now?
No, you know, I get invited to preach at churches on occasion, and so half the people really enjoy that. The other half haven't heard a Lutheran pastor like me, because I go a little hard.
Well, it's anything like this cast, man. Pack a helmet, a tissue, and everything in between.
Yeah, either scare people, they're like, hey, that's great, or don't ever invite him back, he's way too jumpy and yell out. So I do that a little bit, you know. I'm always happy to go out and kind of talk about, you know, a missional life, or what that looks like, or how to live into what your gifted set is, or how to push yourself just a little bit to see the world bigger than maybe you see it. So yeah, I'm not a part of an actual parish. You know, I'm close to figuring out how to launch a street church, but it's going to be with friends from the street. I just feel like we're just in a place right now with some momentum, with some of my friends who are semi-housed or living on the street, guys who speak really great faith, to start to launch them. That was originally my original vision, to try to do that, and I realized it might take longer, and I don't have an agenda with that. I mean, all my friends, you know, they're in the faith biz and not looking for a certain flavor of anything, but we're close to that, so that would most likely become a little bit of a missional community that I'll keep being a part of with some of the street friends.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, and I'm all about leadership from within. I mean, so my friends that live outdoors, they're really capable. One of my buddies the other day, he's got a little bit of a learning disability, and just got himself like an electronic Bible verse deal that he's like, hey, you know, I'm dyslexic, this is a great way for me to learn. Like, love it, right? So how can we empower folks that say, hey, I have trouble reading, then maybe you've got a place of leadership here. Like, you don't have to be the best reader to make your voice matter. So do things like that.
Well, dude, I think this kind of embodies your entire journey, where you're like, doctor, this, you know, I'm loud and I'm out here, but then it's like, of course you're going to be a pastor. Like, sometimes people see things for you that you don't take time to see.
I can't outrun it.
Yeah, exactly. Well, particularly right now, I can't outrun anything. But that's true. It's interesting to see sometimes the world digest you differently than you think that they are. But also, I always say, like, regardless if you breathe in God, universe, or Madonna, I'm a huge Madonna fan.
Yep.
Whatever angle it is, like, something's guiding you towards this greater good or this greater. I think if your heart space is in the right space, if you can take back and just listen a little bit, things are kind of guiding you and leading you somewhere. I gotta ask, do you believe your mission is more important than your life?
Yeah, that's a problem for people that love me, right?
Yeah.
I do.
Yeah.
I do, and I posted, I did a little video Facebook, a little 4-minute video on my own Facebook the other day.
Oh, I didn't see this.
Yeah, and I talked about that. You know, I don't want to die, but there's been bullets flying around my house, and not just one shot, but you know, like 50, 60 bullets right down my street and at my house. In just the last couple months. You know, I don't want to die, and that's, you know, that's a wrestler, right, with my great partnership with Kara right now. She's like, hey, we just, you know, met a year ago. Yeah. How can we keep this thing going? Like, it'd be great to say this doesn't affect us, except the flashes of guns were coming at us. Yeah. And it's not going to stop, right? I live in the hood. Right. But my calling is greater than my safety. And my life is not about protection, and I always want to live, you know, a life of significance, you know, and for me that comes with risk. And I think I got mad street smarts. I've been picking up hitchhikers since I was 16, and I got great street smarts. I'm learning every day still. I surround myself, you know, with guys on the street that I'm always learning from, and who always want to educate me. I got 100 guys that say nothing will ever happen to me, except none of them were there during those gunshots. Right, yeah. So I don't want to have a tragic finish to that. Sure. And I don't want somebody to go nuts on me on the street. And sometimes, you know, guys will test me, or due to some health issues, bad things will happen. But I'm also not going to stop or back down, you know. A good friend of mine once told me a couple of years ago, staying in the same place, doing what you're doing, is not going to get you to the place that God's already prepared for you. So that comes with risk, it comes with attention, it comes with stepping out, it comes with a push. And I don't see myself stopping at this point, you know. Yeah. I think it's going to get better, and the calling's going to become fresher and newer. And I mean, I hope 5 years from now I can look and be like, oh my God, I didn't know what I was doing. Yeah. And that the impact is it's worth it. Yeah. Yeah. Well,
I mean, God bless you, and God bless Karen for being a true partner and a true supporter, and that's huge. You know, with 2 brothers, and one retired now, but one still in military, you know, it's a kind of a conscious conversation. And that question doesn't come from dark space, you know, to live recklessly. I mean, you're living consciously and knowing that the mission is greater than one person. Yeah. And then you have to kind of pursue that fearlessly. Yeah. One of my favorite quotes is Benjamin Franklin. I'd rather it be said, he lived usefully than died rich. And I think that's so critical. Some people, you know, their mission is, they're less adverse to harmful things happening, and some not. And I don't know, but I also think you might just have something greater helping protect you and look out. You know.
That I believe.
Man, I'm also inspired. I'm like, man, we gotta do some. Like, I'm confident what I do. I know that it matters. Yeah. But talking to people like you is like, what else can I do, and how else can I show up?
Yeah. So if people, you know, are always open to. Forward Kicks is always open to receiving, you know, financial support that we buy shoes from. At this point, you know, we're, you know, myself, anybody we're partnered with, are all unpaid. Everything's going right into the mission. You know, maybe one day we'll get to someplace different. But right now, that's the vision and goal, and to get so, you know, successful, air quote, you know, of what we're doing, that, you know, to keep things going, we'll need to be at that place. I want to be bigger. You know, Mont Bella's next, but who knows what's coming after that, right? Yeah. And so for that place of just some financial support, which people can do through the website. People can always donate shoes, and you just get together some friends and say, hey, we're collecting shoes for kids' feet. Like, you know, we're looking for sparkle shoes because that's what girls love, you know, all dudes, you know, want black shoes. You know, my friends on the street are like, Tiger, you got any black shoes? Like, hey, lay off. Yeah, I'm not in charge of all this stuff. You know, and I've just partnered with a good friend of mine at the Reciprocity Collective that gets folks off the street into housing. They do a bunch of to work rather. Do work with the Denver Zoo and some other, and start a partnership with them and just trying to get new work shoes on their people's feet every time. And so things like that are building. And so we're always looking for just to donate. We really just stick with athletic shoes, and those are simple ways for us to say yes to.
Okay, amazing.
Yeah.
So holykicks.org.
Yep, Holy Kicks with a WHOLLY,
Yes.
kicks.org.
Instagram's the same.
Yep.
Holy Kicks. Our
Facebook. I know I'm not like the social media guy. I'm really under
I feel like you're pretty good about it.
Well, I love to be under the radar sort of guy. So that place of, you know, just generating some interest for let's see what's going on in the street. I try to do some education, right? Some gentle posts to get people saying, what's going on?
Yeah.
Yeah, so my personal Facebook at Tyg Taylor, TYJ Taylor, is I probably post more on there than I do on the Holy Kicks, because that's more about life in the hood. You'll never see a picture of a hot dog that I ate, or you'll never see a picture of, you know.
If you want basic, come to mine.
Yeah, you know, like, you know, Kara and I on the hammock this weekend, you won't see that. It's exactly. I stick with street life. It's intentional. If there is a branding piece to me, I'm trying to do that because I'm trying to stay focused on what life in the street looks like and trying to encourage people to look at their own neighborhood, you know, to move beyond just thinking about stuff, but doing stuff. And people can always DM me on any of those as well. And if, you know, folks want to come out and experience what's it like to participate in an event or a shoe event like that, you know, try to limit my number of white folks coming out and helping me do things. But, you know, there's always space for one or two. I just try to be appropriate.
So you try and keep it as diverse or minimal amount of...
Yep.
Because is it too much when there's like a bunch of white people coming in?
Yeah, white people on parade, that's what I call it.
Oh, okay.
And that's just my personal agenda. So I'll bring people out to the street with me to walk with me sometimes to teach them about the hood or poverty, or teach them just like, how do you look at a for sale sign or a mattress in an alley? Like, what does that mean? And try to get people to pay attention to the neighborhood. You can do that in a rich neighborhood. You know, what does a for sale sign look like in a rich neighborhood?
Yeah.
When you know that, you know, mom's never home, right? What does that look like when, you know, a kid heads off to college and suddenly that couple's they're on their own now? Like, things are happening. You can pay attention to any neighborhood. And I try to teach people how do you look in an impoverished neighborhood for those things. So I'll do walks with people. You know, if anybody wants to come out with me and learn, I can do that with small numbers as well. And my friends on the street, you know, I try to be cool about that, so that's not like, you know, poverty tourism, which is super gross.
Totally. Is it predominantly not white where you are? I mean, Colorado isn't that diverse compared to most states.
Yeah, most of my friends experiencing homelessness or folks that are just hanging on the block are mostly black friends.
Okay.
Lots of Latinos live in my neighborhood. There's cultural differences about how folks interact. There's, you know, parks are different, certain places on the street are different, certain neighborhoods, certain motels are different, day labor places focus different things culturally, lots of unspoken things that just exist. Okay. And those are all things I try to teach people, you know. Probably nobody's paid attention to a pawn shop or cash checking or what a dollar store, how evil it is. And those are things I try to talk to people about, you know, fight the power.
Yeah. We've got like 25 podcasts we need to have after this. That's amazing. I want to be sensitive of your time and you saving the world. I can only take so much of your energy here. But I appreciate you. I appreciate obviously what you do, but your vulnerability and you as a human out there for other people to see what you're doing and be inspired by your actions. And really being a voice for all people. I think that's really, really critical. We got to check in like 6 months.
Yeah.
And see where Holy Kicks is taken off. I didn't realize you had just taken like the full leap into it, because I think some really crazy, awesome things are going to happen pretty fast. Yeah.
At this point, you know, we've done probably, I don't know, maybe about 450 pairs of shoes. I mean, hopefully next year, by really investing full time into this process, you know, we're going to be in a whole other world. Like, start small, start now.
Yeah. Yes. Your lips to God's ears. And every entrepreneur that's out there that's thinking about doing something really good for the world, jump on in. Well, please check out Tyg, check out Holy Kicks, check out what they have going on. I will commit to doing at minimum 1 shoe drive, if you will, for you. Yeah. I know some of the girls I trained with at Palladium, I told them you were going to be on the cast, and they're like, oh my, we want to go do what he's doing, like, let us come out. And I'm like, all right, so I'll commit to at minimum 1 event, but we'll definitely get in the mix. Yeah. And I'd certainly love to help, maybe in the sponsorship conversation. Love it. We might have some connects. I'm going to put one of my friends, Sarah, who works with Finish Line, on the spot here. I'll hit her up, and we'll just see where we can, you know, contribute to the cause.
Maybe we do a park wad and a little event afterwards.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. I think more people within the gym would be interested, or maybe you already know that, but I think people would be pretty game for that kind of stuff.
Can't do it alone.
Yeah, yeah. I will say, I think the underlying tone of this conversation is support. And really, and that's something in my life. If you look around my world, I've been very adamant on doing things myself. Core value is, number 2 core value is independence. But I've really learned over time how valuable support is and how to really fully open up my world, still in progress, to that support and getting to the next step, because you can't without it, regardless where you're at. Any parting quotes or notes or words?
Yeah, just have everybody just ask themselves a little question, you know, who you walking with.
Yeah, so well said. Tyg, I appreciate you. Thank you for coming on. Like I said, we'll catch back up, and hopefully in a few months we're having an even more in-depth conversation about all the stuff you're doing.
Awesome.
Cool.
Grateful.
Cheers. I love it. Signing out. Thank you for tuning in, and be sure to check out Tyg and Holy Kicks. Cheers. Stop.
Yeah.
All right, I'm gonna export right away because I always freak out that. Tyg, that was amazing.
Oh gosh, thank you.
You feel good?
Yeah, it's so natural.
I don't think that's cold.
No, I gotta drink it now. Okay. Sit there yammering.
Yeah, dude, that was amazing. Thank you so much for sharing about your world and your wife. That's incredible. That kind of even opened up my heart on love and open to love, and that's a whole other podcast too. But
I was listening to when you had your one friend on the Star Summer and kind of talking about relationship stuff, and I actually met Kara through a gal that I met at CrossFit, who was your age. She was a lot younger than me, and she had been.
Wait, your girlfriend's Kara? Did I say
Kara? Yeah, Kara.
Oh shit, I think I said Kara.
Yeah, I think you did. It's okay.
I'm sorry.
It's okay. It's still okay.
Tell her my bad.
Because you had said Kara earlier, but yeah, so this cool girl named Krista, and you know, we had worked out together, and she would, you know, she used to say I used to try to work out by the cool guy. So me and this other dude named Chuck, this Mormon guy, and we, you know, a handful of months before I left Monument, I just said, hey, you know, I'd love to chat with, you know, like, that sounds really rough bringing your kids to school for the first time. You know, we were just kind of friends from the gym, just chatting, you know, not more than like you and I were chatting, right? And I said, I'd love to hear more of your story, like I would do with anybody, like I do with anybody. And we went and had coffee, and she got on freak out. I saw her at the gym that afternoon. She's like, I'm a mess right now. And anyway, we ended up meeting for a beer later that night, and we just kind of hit it off, and we started spending some time together, and you know, kind of got this really great relationship going. And she was actually with me when I found my house. Like, Kristen's kind of a part of that story. But she was, it turns out, Kristen was Kara's best friend's neighbor. So Kristen had always hung out with this guy named Aaron, and Aaron was pretty good friends with Kara. And you know, Kara knew all about Kristen's story and stuff, but she's super successful businesswoman in the defense world, and not a feeler. So I don't do anything about Myers or Enneagram stuff.
A little bit.
She's a 3, a performer.
Oh, I've never done the numbers. Okay.
Yeah, and do
you know what you are?
Yeah, I'm a 2, caregiver.
Okay.
And they're often like considered celebrity couples. They're really fun to be around, but they never work. She can't feel at all, and so she started feeling through this relationship that I had with her. She's like like somebody I wish I would have met to be my mentor long ago. You know, it was crazy, and we had this kind of wild relationship that we had going, And, you know, I moved to up here, and, you know, we knew it would probably be really possible for a lot of reasons. She had 2-3 elementary age kids. And, you know, she's like, hey, I just can't do the relationship. Like, I can't do it. Like, it's just not me. And I'm like, okay, you know, it was pretty devastating. Anyway, but when I was listening to your podcast, and Kara had been single for 12 years, dated lots of guys, she came up here really to find love. Oh, she hated Colorado Springs for all the reasons I did. She was married to a physician before. And she's 53. And her friend, Erin, the neighbor, the best friend, had told me all along, she's like, Tyg, Kristen's gonna drive you fucking nuts because she doesn't return my text. Like, she's the hardest person. Like, it's always gonna be hard with her. Okay. And she's like, but I'm telling you, I know the girl for you.
Wow.
And Kristen, kind of knowing that she had said that, and she was a little bit like, hey, I don't know if I want this to be a thing, but also, you know,
it's real though.
Anyway, it's so crazy. And so that's how I was actually down at Kristen's house. We kept taking, like, our relationship got better after she decided it wasn't official.
The psychology so of labels, though, is a thing.
Yeah, but it's so funny. And I'm listening to your podcast about talking about relationship, and you're like, hey,
which one was it? Was it why are you married?
Yeah, and you were talking about all that stuff. And I was like, wow, like, Kristen is so much like my Kristen. Oh, you know, like, some of that stuff of like, hey, I'm good, and like, it's fun to date, and, you know, my Kristen was all about like, hey, can we keep this going with the booty call? And like, yeah, like, that's kind of fun, but that's gonna drive me crazy, you know, like, and you know, like, I'm listening to that podcast, I was like, it honestly helped me, Kristen, because I really loved Kristen, you know, and we had this massive breakthrough in so many places. Like, she's different because of me, and I mean, she helped me get out of Trinity, get this shit going, hold me accountable. You can do this. But I'm listening to that, and it kind of helped me let go of some stuff, you know, like that whole place of like, hey, people have to be wired for certain things, you know? And that idea of like, hey, this is who I am, and I'm not wired. I'm wired for relationship. You know, I told my congregation that even, I realized that after that, like, and Shelly knew that, you know?
That's key. That's key pieces. And I also think when those two opposites attract, like, something's fulfilling you in your life. For other reasons. I think people come in, like the last guy I did wanted to get married and I think it was for all different reasons, and we were never a match. But I learned, and we had way less in common than we did have in common outside of fitness and basic dogs and basic things. But what I learned from it, what I saw that I needed from that was huge. But I also haven't, I would say, just in you describing Kristen, I want to do things on my own, but I also really have not seen a lot of great examples of successful love. And not from a jaded space, just in our reality. And I'm in a lot of, like, fitness world and not Hollywood, but, like, notoriety stuff. And so, like, I think very minimal feeling things are successful in those arenas. But I just, it's taken a lot for me to believe it can make my Serenity world any better, as dark as that sounds. But I'm open to it, because deep down I do actually think I'm a relationship person, independent in it, but the right person would really, I don't want to say complete, but like fulfill my world in all the way it's unfulfilled now. But that's a journey to get to.
It's a journey, right?
Yes.
And I've learned so much. You know, I sat there all these years really, you know, doing sort of pastoral counsel with marriages and things, and like, you know, hear things about infidelity and things like that, and that was never, you know, I mean, everybody who knows, who hangs out with me knows I like the lady. I'm like, you know, like, I'm that guy, you know, I'm definitely like that. Wow, she is super hot, you know.
But you're a relationship guy.
But you know, I was faithful to Shelly for a lifetime. We met at 18.
I know, that's unbelievable. And how old when you got married?
I turned 22 on our honeymoon.
Wow.
In Las Vegas.
That's a young human. Do you see 22-year-olds nowadays?
No, So we met young, you know. So, I mean, that kind of single life that I had, like when I met Kristen, I was like, wow, it's
a whole different
thing. And this is really fun. You know, there were a lot of things I was like, man, you know, and Kristen was like, post the breakup, she's like, hey, dude, I'm 100% behind you. Like, we can be friends, and you go, like, you know, and all of that was sort of fun and exciting, but like my caregiver lover heart, you know, like some of the fun that I had also was like, this could be nuts, you know? And when I met Kara, she's like, hey, like, you were the same girl for a long time. Like, are you sure you don't, like, you sure you're good? You know, like.
Especially that in depth of a relationship.
That in depth, right?
Yeah.
But I'm telling you, like, she's like an amazing, phenomenal human being. And so our lives were different because she had like 12 years of singleness, lots of dating opportunities, you know, a couple of those short-term boyfriends and that stuff. But, you know, our patterns were different, but the things that we wanted in life, and that place of partnership, and, you know, was so important to both of us, you know?
Yeah.
So.
Well, dude, and your jobs and your lifestyle and your mission in life, that sounds incredibly in common.
But Kristen's on my board.
Oh, okay.
My Kristen's on my board, you know, which she was, you know.
Is she still single?
She is a little bit. She had this one dude from CrossFit that she was kind of hanging out with, who was super loaded. And I just chat with her on a rare occasion, but she had said, like, she's like, yeah, I went from a street guy, a guy who works on the street, to, you know, a dude that's loaded with an extra house in Puerto Rico that, you know. Okay, that's a whole different world, but none of that was important to her. Yeah. You know, which was super cool. But yeah, but she doesn't want a relationship. You know? And she's like, hey, this is great. We can hang out a little bit. He wants to do his own thing, and I want to do mine. And but yeah, that would drive me crazy. Yeah. And Karen and I love spending time together. Yeah. Well, I think that's part of. So you got to find what you want.
Well, I think the term relationship is different for different people.
Yeah.
But again, if it's casual and it's like casual for both sides, fine. But then if I'm committed, I want someone coming in, like, come and correct, like, has their life together, or their mission or their core values. And like there's reciprocity in it. I do think if you have two different expectations, then you don't.
What's the longest, like, have you had some long-term relationship stuff, or that stuff you said, hey, this is really close? That one dude?
Probably about, oh God, he was in New York for a while at the beginning, so probably the whole time was 2 years, maybe. Yeah. And that's like the longest. I mean, outside like high school when it's like freshman year or something like that. Sure. But that's pretty much it. Yeah. My life has been, and, you know, my parents are divorced, and all, you know, I have 3 younger brothers. None of us even have boyfriends or girlfriends or anything. Yeah. And we all kind of, you know, going on our own mission. Yeah. But that's certainly a piece of the puzzle. Their breakup and how it was. Like, it was zero complaints about my childhood whatsoever. But I really appreciate, like, my house, my serenity, my life. And we also got to see, I think this is really a gift, how much marriage takes. Like, to this day, my dad will still say, your mom's my soulmate. And I'm like, do you say that in front of Liz? And he's like, actually, yeah. I'm like, oh, okay, well, to each their own. But I think true, deep love, and yet no tools to navigate marriage. So for us, I think we saw how much work it takes, and I really do believe it takes a shitload of work. I don't think I've really been open to doing that. As much of a hard worker as I am on everything else, for that, I was like, I don't want to do it. Yeah. Like, I want peace and serenity in this. Yeah. And so now, at 39, I've really worked to make myself my best self, and then be open to a counterpart that is equally as successful, and that he's on the same page. And I don't know, we'll see.
Yeah, and finding that, you know, that's the weird thing about finding that person. You know, how do you let yourself be open to the universe? Yeah. You know? Yeah. Right? And I mean, that's the weird thing too, right, Kristen? Like, during that time when, you know, when my Kristen was like, hey, let's just be buds. You know, I'm like, okay. And, you know, like, as I was like when I was kind of open to the universe, like, it's amazing what comes your way.
It's like, a little fearful, but I'm almost fearful, consciously open. Well, because you don't know how it's going to look either.
Right, it's cuckoo.
But you got to take faith that it is the best thing for what you genuinely do want.
It is crazy. And you know who you are, and you've got this life you forged, and this vision that you have, and, you know, like, that's that place, you know, I'm concerned about Alma a little bit, you know, like, I always show Kara all this post. She's like, you're obsessed with, I said, no, I find,
her social media?
I find Alma so curious.
I love her so much.
But, you know, that's that place as Alma makes herself kind of open to the universe, and her struggles with her guy and stuff. Like, hey, Alma, like, that will have an outcome. I know. You know, that will have the outcome you kind of maybe want right now, you know, like, but it is like, how do you check yourself in a place of saying, hey, this is my, you know, the track or the tunnel or, you know, the path that I need to be on versus, you know, in the healthiest ways, because there's this energy we put off that is powerful, right?
Oh, and people sense it. And I honestly think particularly men. Like, I think women are very intuitive and they sense stuff, but I think men, when consciously or unconsciously seeking a female, I think it is incredibly transparent. Whether they know it or not, and I think it's very offsetting. Like, I think tell me if I'm wrong, when guys know, like, that's their girl, like, I think they know. But girls, I think, kind of be like, I don't know, and then it can kind of evolve. Right. I think dudes kind of just know.
I think the same of guys that I've chatted with, and so
I try not to judge Alma though, because she was married at 15.
Oh no, it's so tough.
And she's 9 years younger than me, so I'm like, I was probably acting a certain way. Maybe not that outwardly, but
it's that interesting piece of kind of how do you, you know, kind of fighting the power of the world or become who you are. Like, is that who you are?
Right.
You know, like that becomes the, you know, the health piece. You know, so I mean, you're probably so good for her to kind of mentor her along a little bit in the midst of all of that. You know, that's a positive influence.
I hope so. You know, it's so funny. It's me, Alma, Claire, and Stephanie that train here, and I'm almost like you're my first white friend. I'm like, seriously? Like, this is the thing, but it's so funny how different we are, and yet we are literally like core values and everything else. I mean, there's some motivated ass humans. Like Alma, even though how she appears on social media, her kiddos, they come here and they were working on this, sat in there, left them in the house, didn't do anything, like weren't running amok. They say please and like good kids.
What's Alma do for work?
She went to East High School. Worked in, I think, marketing and sales for a while, and now she's a stay-at-home mom. So she's got time also. But she's smart and she's savvy, and it's not exactly how it looks on social media. She's got her shit together. And she's a full-time mom, and like she takes it seriously. So and I told her, I'm like, they're on social media, like you gotta understand what's happening here. But she's also like me, where she's not gonna listen and just be like, okay, I'm gonna do what I want. So.
Well, that's part of her coming of age, right? That part of that deal of feeling like she would never. And some of it's so cultural, like it's hard for us to get our head around. What that feels like to not have a voice. You know, that's a thing.
Oh, well, when she talks about like her Hispanic background, she's like, my dad will still come in and grab me by the hair and be like, quit acting like this, doing this, and it's very misogynistic, and this is the woman's role, and I'm like.
Yeah, and that's some of the trauma, right? Like all of us, how we act out to the world, or you know, I mean, eventually we all have some. Like I had a come to Jesus moment last year, last summer, early in the summer, and like it could have ended up bad, unfortunately, but you know, thank God it didn't, and. Like, you know, we'll all have these breakthroughs that they'll sort of get your shit together. Hey, that was your chance. Or, you know, that's your sign, whatever it needs to be. Or like, hey, like, you got to stop this. Or
you got to have good humans around you.
You got to have good humans around you.
Pulling you out. Like, but last year was probably my most successful financially and working with bigger companies and blah, blah, blah. Around, not bad humans, but not my people. And completely down this wrong surrounding of people and the way that impacts you and your daily and how you live and blocks your true mission, it's critical. So I mean, thank goodness it sounds like you had the right people being like, what's going on, like pull back to what's going, let's get back to mission and whatever. But man, if you're still having those moments and you're this dialed in and you pastor and connected to ground and then yeah, that was funny. Like funny. Like Kristen at that time, she had said to me, she's like, yeah, but you're the healthiest person I know. I'm like, right, but that I just like, but I had to screw up. Like, you know, like I'm allowed to break too. You know, and unfortunately, it could have been tragic. You know, but it wasn't. But you know, like that place, like, and that struck me about like, hey, how do we? And I'm pretty vulnerable. Like she knew me well, right? But that idea of hey, you're not allowed to fuck up. You know, like that place, and like to also to realize, like, you know, how do we have those moments in life where we become defining to say, who am I or who am I not, and do something about it, you know? Yeah.
So I mean, that's really, I think, a powerful thing for your listeners, Kristen. Like, people hear you and you're vulnerable. You got to be a leader and in charge and moving things and careful with your vulnerability. But you make it crystal clear, how you've grown. And
I hope so.
Yeah. I mean, I think those are good things, like how you listened to your, when you had your black guest on with your open mic deal, your honesty about, excuse me, I don't know about these things, or teach me, or I'm trying to learn. But also, it's really good. I mean, I listen to a lot of podcasts. I know you do too. But from a communication standpoint, you're really good at. I mean, keep practicing this. That you say, hey, here's my experience that kind of relates to that, but I'm not putting my shit on you. Yeah. That's a skill set you're really good at.
Oh, good. That's
seriously, it's good.
Oh, good. Okay, yeah. Thank you for that. Yeah. That's deeply meaningful.
It's good.
Because the last thing, that's why I kind of jab at influencers. Like, people don't really want to be influenced, they want to be inspired. So like the last thing I want to do is been like, here's how it is, and this is, and I'm white, but I'm going to talk to a black person like I know that I'm black, and they're so and I don't know, I'm still new at this. I never really, and I also communicate like a wild animal. Like, it's not, you see how my dad communicates. Sometimes it's like, ooh, I'm glad I know you because that's probably not what you meant. Right. So I'm always conscious of that, and I'm okay with this being a completely flawed journey and being like, I said the wrong thing. Like, let's back up. You're
gonna have to just keep giving yourself grace.
Yeah.
But the podcast, go back and edit. But
well, no, I try not to edit. I know some of it does need editing, but
I think it's cool that you don't.
Yeah. I can't.
That's your style.
It's got to be so real. I mean, the whole reason I started is because I come from this edited world, and I'm helping influencers that are like looking fit, whatever, and then they have bulimia, and I don't say that dismissively, but it's like, and what are our young people seeing this? This target that's moving and not real. This is what they're seeking, and it's not even like, no, I can't have that. So
I got I'm not super connected to Shelly's family anymore because they couldn't get their head around this life I'm living now, and unfortunately, which is curious, right?
Wow.
But they had a vision for me I wasn't going to be able to do, but I've got this niece, Lauren. She's a little hottie. Sells hair products. She was the Victoria's Secret, spokesperson at CU for a couple years.
Okay.
And so now she makes her living as an influencer with her bazillion followers and selling her hair care shit. And, it's hashtag boss girl, hashtag this, and she's doing it. And it's, like, if you see pictures of, you're like, wowzer.
Yeah.
That is a heck of a filter on that girl. She's really photographs well. And but her whole shit is so fake. It's like, hey, do you want to sit around and not be the person you want to become? Only you can unlock. It's the positivity and the bullshit is so fake because she just needs followers and girls to get online to buy her hair care, and she's like the number one. She's like, hey, just earned my 3rd trip to the Dominican Republic this year, all expense paid, And even her boyfriend Cole, who's been her lifetime boyfriend, he's a professional dancer.
Oh, okay.
He's not going to be a nurse.
Okay.
If you could see Cole's post, he used to, take her to sorority things at CU, and I'm always thinking, like, those sorority guys have to be like, what's with dancing, boy?
I love all of this.
Oh, God, she's too much. And he posts.
How old is she?
She's 23 now, 23.
Oh, God, they're so young,
And her shit, Kara's always like, why do you follow her? It's so gross. I'm like,
I know.
Because I'm trying to stay connected to my family. I never like anything she does, but like, it's just, she'll say, she's like, hey, like she spoke out against some of the, whatever the violence day was a couple weeks ago that people were talking about. I'm going to recognize domestic violence or sex trafficking. All followed up with, I got to use my voice to speak out with the next day. Look at me, like, hey, Lauren, it's unbelievable.
Yeah, but that's totally over their head.
But her messages are like, queen, gorgeous, I'm obsessed. Like, how do you be 23 and not obsessed with yourself? Like,
it's a jungle, and like, again, this is what our young humans. That's what the expectation is. That's what's normal. Even with doing some of my stuff, I've had to embrace like just me in a picture, and it's branded in this, and I believe it because I do think it's a necessary piece of the puzzle, and it's still deeply cringy to me because I'm like, this is like the humans I managed, and like the one cast I had an intuitive on that she's like, you need to let that go. It doesn't need, stop saying it's cringy, stop doing that, and it's still like, it's a balance, because most of it is disgusting.
Right.
And it's like, what messages are we really sending our young humans? Be skinny and rich and you're happy?
Yeah.
Well,
what's interesting, I mean, Lindsay was, she was touching on some of that stuff yesterday. And that idea of kind of, branding yourself, marketing yourself, and talking about the evils of that, but at the same time, feels like she's marketing yourself and branding yourself, 100%.
Well, that's what I tried to weave in the, like, well, yes, it's marketing and branding, but really it's like, who are you as a human? And like kind of tying in the human ties. Yeah,
it's interesting.
But I think that's most successful humans on that level. Like I don't know that I compare marketing companies, but like as an influencer, I think she would be deemed more successful than most people that I meet, myself included, because I think she's been very intentional of like email lists and tracking and this and like even the people she quoted are very like marketing savvy, and it's all like your go-to gurus, blah blah blah. And I think that's the way things were done. Moving forward, again with our young humans being able to find transparency, I don't think that that's going to be the sought out human. I wish she would have leaned a little more into like, I was bulimic, and versus like a talking point, it was like a story, you know. And those are like hugely vulnerable points. Like that would be hard for me. That was one of my things that'd be hard for me to talk about. If they, I don't know. I just think when it feels a certain way and you picked up on it right away, I think, you know, instead of 30 plus we're noticing it, I think 16 plus you're noticing it, and that changes how we consume and purchase and live. So I just think there's going to be a shift in like those people being successful with the old school ways of doing things are going to start to filter out, because our young people are going to be like, I don't want to be on another email list, I don't want to be on this. But we'll see. That's just my hypothesis.
Yeah, it's interesting, the 20-year-olds right now, right, with this indignation against the world. And I just went a couple weeks ago. It was a kid from Trinity, my old church, and she is a weekly protester, going hard post. She recently posted a picture of her mask that said, Karen, blue lives aren't a thing. Which was hard, you know, like, okay, that's a statement, you know. And but I love what, her name's LJ, and I love what LJ's doing in the world right now, right? Because we need somebody to get out and do it. And so LJ has got the skill set for that. Like, you know, I happen to need blue lives because 2 cops reached out to me to say, Tyg, are you safe? And one of my buddies came by, who was first on the scene. I mean, he was the guy that walked up to that car. He also stops by my Holy Kicks event yesterday because it was outside. It's like, Tyg, I don't know how you do this stuff. You know, so like there's a cop that says, hey, you gathered more people than I think is legal right now, and you're breaking all the rules. Keep doing what you do, and I'll also be in front of your house to get the guys that are shot up. You know, like, okay, that's a blue life. I kind of,
like a reality series in itself.
It's so crazy, right?
Yeah.
So, but I love that Laura's out there fighting it and saying like, hey, we got to make a change. I mean, these guys have just held down those kids. You know, and that's, I mean, it's.
Well, dude, Aurora police in general, man. I saw they just elected the new police chief.
Oh, they did? Was it the gal?
Washington, I think. The blonde-haired girl with short hair, I think.
Okay.
Unless I just saw a highlight.
If that's who gal, well, Karen just said that this morning. I thought she was talking about
Washington or something?
Yeah, that gal's. I think that gal's gay.
Oh, yeah, I guess so.
So that's.
I hate the stereotype, but it looks like it.
Yeah.
Is that good or bad?
No, I would think good in Aurora. You know, but here's the interesting thing, right? So in the Black community and in the brown community, there's less openness to that.
Oh, for sure.
So that could be a thing in our community.
Okay.
Right? So, I mean, who knows?
Okay.
But good for a city council making a push.
Yeah. You know, the more I'm around, because I mean, at this point, Alma, Stephanie, and Claire are pretty much like my best friends, with the people I see more than anyone, because we're training together, and then we help each other out we hang out like as friends on weekends, and we help each other out for driveways or car rides or whatever. Seeing how they talk about their culture and white people, I would say far less open-minded than I think most of my white friends. Justifiably so, because the more I get back behind it, I'm like, why is any person of color friends with any white person? Because history is pretty terrible. And that's an ignorant statement itself, but it blows my mind. But then I hear them like, because Stephanie is gay, and she's like, it's hard being a Black female, and she's becoming a dentist, and being a minority, and being gay, and she's like, my family doesn't accept it, and almost like my family would never accept that. Like, so it's so weird to hear how unopen-minded minorities are versus white people, which kind of seemed counterintuitive in my mind.
It's great to be exposed to that, though, right? All of a sudden you're like, I didn't know. I thought all Black people just wanted white people to like them.
Well, I wouldn't go that far. I would say just get out of their way. way. Like, stop holding back like what's in the way. But I don't know. It's just eye-opening, but it's so critical. And I'm like, how amazing. And then almost open us up to like bakeries and like the way we cook now is a little bit different, or tricks of the trade on Instagram, real stuff. Yeah,
I mean, it's why it's so good to just expose yourself to the world.
It's ironic that we all met at Palladium, though, which is like the whitest place ever. Most Stapleton, I should say.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. A couple guys that are Spanish speakers that will speak Spanish to each other.
Yeah.
I always think like that's almost a subset like going on. Like those dudes will be their Spanish together, but then they break. Yeah, and I've always found that curious. I was talking to Gabe the other day. He shows up in the afternoon. He runs the Pancake House down into.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, down at DTC. He's worked down there forever.
Oh, wait, which one's Gabe?
Gabe, he's like the shorter Latino guy, handsome, really fun.
Yeah,
he's
like, cute. I know. Okay,
really cute guy. He's probably like 5'8", and he's good looking,
I'll
just
go
cool.
There. Okay.
Yeah, really cool. But guys like that got a little different culture piece going on. I mean, like they kind of often stick, and what's his Roberto's not. He's not even back. No. Roberto used to work out with us all the time. Like he hasn't been back.
Oh, okay, I don't know.
Super strong guy, Spanish speaker, real good looking.
Super ripped.
Pretty ripped, pretty big.
Okay.
He's got a couple little girls. Recently got divorced.
Oh, okay.
He always posts like on Instagram. There's Maceo.
I don't think I follow him.
And he hardly ever posts pictures of himself. He'll do like things, but he hasn't been back to the gym.
Okay.
He's like a counter guy.
Okay.
There's countertops, and his English is not spectacular by any means. Like almost a language barrier.
Well, I get it. Even Stephanie was talking about, because we were going up to. I take my dogs to the park on Saturday, and they were here working out, so they walked up the street. And they're like, "We can't believe how diverse it is up here." And I'm like, "It's pretty good. I mean, gentrification's real, but we're pretty good up here." And there's still some of like the OGs that grew up here, my house included. But she's like, the second we walk in, we always recognize other Black people, and we kind of have like a look and a nod, and I'm like, that makes sense. I know. And I'm like, was there white people up there? She's like, yeah. But it's fascinating to hear like the different perspectives. Yeah. And I'm so grateful for it that we at least are actually real friends now, and we can have those open conversations.
It's critical. Your world.
Oh, dude. I mean, I wish it happened 30 years ago, but we'll take it now.
I know. It's, it's weird, right? Like, how many white people say, I want my Black friends, or I want a Black friend, Like my mom always says, she's said for 100 years, I've always wanted a gay friend. I just think they're such neat people. And her grandson, my son, is gayer than gay.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, and which is always funny, And Taylor's one of these guys, he was doing Cirque du Soleil at 5,
okay.
He's not a sassy guy at all.
Okay.
He's just thin and neat and...
Okay. All the stereotypes.
And he's always like, some guys of colors. His boyfriend he's working on his PhD in neuroscience at UNC, and he's Central American. But, I always thought that was funny with my mom. Like, Mom, you just hang out with Taylor. Like, you get all the gay shit you need, It's so funny.
How old's your daughter?
Thank you for joining Turmeric and Tequila with your host, Kristen Olson. Tune in next time, and don't forget to subscribe on Apple, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen.